Thank you for watching this Dear Systems tutorial. This is a continuation of the stock received video showing you how to partially receive stock. There are two scenarios for partially receiving stock. In the first scenario, partial deliveries will be made with the same invoice. You will need to navigate to the Stock Received tab and either fill in the stock received line by line or copy from the invoice. This will fill in the product name and also the quantity that was specified on the invoice. If, however, the quantity that you have received is different to the invoice quantity, for example, we have only received 5 of this item rather than 25, rather than authorizing the stock received, you can save it. This will keep the purchase order open so you can receive the rest of the stock specified on the invoice. However, the received stock will be available for sales and manufacturing in your inventory. When you receive another delivery for this invoice, you can then amend the quantity. For example, in the next delivery, 10 more of the item is delivered. Again, you can amend the quantity and save the stock received step. This will add the stock into your inventory where it can be used. This step can be repeated as many times as you have deliveries. Once the total quantity specified on the invoice has been delivered, amend the quantity and authorize the stock received. This will complete this step of the purchase order. The second scenario is when you receive multiple deliveries for the same order with multiple invoices, or one invoice per delivery. In this case, it is recommended to have the input method selected as stock first. This is because the amount of stock received must also equal the invoice quantity to be able to authorize the purchase order. If you do not choose the stock first input method, you will be able to go back and amend the invoice, but you will have to undo the stock received step to amend the invoice quantities. As before, authorize the purchase order or select a previously authorized purchase order. You can then navigate to the Stock Received tab. In the Stock Received tab, add the item lines either individually or by copying from the order. If you have received a partial delivery, enter the quantity of the items that you did receive. Save the purchase order at this point. You can then navigate to Clone the purchase order, keeping the order number the same. This will automatically generate a new purchase order with the difference between the current stock received and the purchase order quantity. Click Confirm to create the new purchase order. As you can see, the stock quantity is the difference between the previous stock received and the total purchase order quantity. The stock from the previous purchase order has not yet been received into inventory and had the invoice processed, so let's go and finish that now. Navigate to Purchases. Locate the previous purchase order. And go back to the Stock Received tab. You can authorize this partial delivery, go to the Invoice tab, amend the invoice quantity to reflect the stock delivery, update the total quantity, and then authorize the invoice. This will receive the stock into your inventory and authorize the invoice for this partial delivery. Now we can go back to our cloned purchase order. Go back to Purchases, and select your cloned purchase order. When you next receive a delivery, go to the Stock Received tab. As before, you can add in the order lines line by line or copying from the order. Enter the quantity that you have received with this delivery. If this is still not the complete stock quantity and there are more deliveries to come, repeat the same process. The process can be repeated as many times as you need. Save the purchase order, clone it, keeping the order number the same. As before, you would have to go back to the previous partial purchase order to authorize the stock received and process the invoice associated with the partial delivery. Once the final stock delivery has been made, process and authorize the stock receipt, and then process and authorize the invoice associated with that partial delivery. Update the invoice total, authorize the invoice, and this completes the delivery. This concludes the partial stock delivery tutorial.